Donald Trump just suffered another major defeat in federal court, and it adds up to a growing list of legal and political setbacks that continues to follow him. Now, a federal judge permanently blocked Trump's attempt to impose a proof of citizenship required for federal voter registration. That's embarrassing. Now, the court ruled that a president does not have an authority to unilaterally rewrite election rules. According to the judge, those powers belong to Congress and states, not to the White House. Made it clear. So this wasn't a temporary pause. This was a permanent injunction. And that's the key point right here. So for months and months, Trump and his allies urged requiring proof of citizenship would protect election integrity. Now, supporters saw as a common sense. Critics argued that would create a barrier for eligible voters and exceed presidential authority. Now, the court has made this very clear. Judge Denise Casper ruled that executive branch cannot simply impose new election requirements without congressional approval. Wow. That means Trump proposal is effectively dead unless Congress passes legislation creating those requirements on a very clear scale. This is not just a policy loss. This is another legal defeat in a long series of courtroom battles. Think about the pattern, right? Time after time, Trump announces a major initiative, promises dramatic changes, and then finds himself facing a judge who questioned whether the law actually allows what he's really trying to do in America. And increasingly, the courts are saying absolute and clear no. Whether people support him or oppose him, the reality is that courtroom operates very differently than political rallies. Trust me. And at the rallies, applause determines success, right? But in the court, evidence, constitutional authority, and legal precedent determines success in court. And that is where Donald Trump continues running into a lot of problems. His critics argue that this latest ruling reflects a broader issue. They say Trump often pushes the limit of executive power, assuming that presidential authority is broader than it actually is. Then the court steps in right here. Then the lawsuit begins. Another defeat follows Donald Trump. For Donald Trump's supporter, this ruling is frustrating because they believe election security remains a serious concern in America. They argue that proof of citizenship requirement would help strengthen confidence in elections. Wow. So for opponents, the ruling is a victory because they believe Constitution established clear limits on presidential authority and protects voting access. But regardless of which side people are on politically, one fact is difficult to very ignore. Trump lost this case again, and it continues a pattern that has become increasingly very familiar to Donald Trump. Every time a major legal challenge emerges, Donald Trump portrays the situation as a fight against the political establishment. Yet, when the case reaches federal courts, judges appointed by both Republican and Democrat presidents often reach conclusions that go against Donald Trump. That is why this ruling matters a lot. It is not just about voters' registration. No, it's all about the presidential power. The court essentially reaffirms a fundamental constitutional principle. Presidents cannot create election law on their own. That's what it means. Those powers belong somewhere else. That limitation exists regardless who occupies the White House, Democrats or Republicans, liberal or conservatives. The Constitution places the boundaries on every precedent right here. They have a thin line right there. The judge ruling reinforces those boundaries. Now, Donald Trump is pivoting, right? Instead of relying on executive action, he's urging Congress to pass legislation that would accomplish similar goals through legislative process. In other words, even Trump now appears to recognize that executive orders route has failed, and that's another important takeaway for him. So when political leader changes the strategy after a court ruling, it often reflects recognition that the legal path is no longer available for that. So the battlefield shifts from courtroom to Congress now. Whether the legislation succeeds is another question totally. We're not talking about that. But for now, the scoreboard is very, very clear. Donald Trump wanted a citizenship requirement imposed through executive actions, but didn't happen. The court stopped it and blocked it totally and permanently. Another huge loss, another huge setback for Donald Trump. Another reminder that campaign promises and legal authority are not the same thing, what they just promised in the rallies. As Donald Trump continues to push an aggressive political agenda, these court fights are likely to continue. Some supporters view this ruling as judicial activism, right? Now, some opponents will view this as a constitutional accountability, but neither side can change the outcome on a very clear side. The federal court has spoken the final words. Donald Trump lost again. As the legal challenges continues to pile up, the question becomes whether this is merely one isolated defeat or probably a part of a larger trend showing that many of Trump's most ambitious policies struggle to survive judicial scrutiny. Now, that debate will continue over and over again. Now, what cannot be debated is today's results. Federal judge permanently blocked Donald Trump's voter citizenship requirement. That cannot be just. The administration lost in court. And the list of legal setbacks just got one entry longer. So let me know in the comments below, what do you think after he lost his kid, and what's really going on with this America, and what he's trying to do with this America, what he really promised in the rallies and the campaigns, and that's not happening anymore, because in the end, he's just getting blocked by the courts. Thank you. See you in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe and stay more up to date.